Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Jefe Shop. This week we're going to do a little bit of engine stuff, a little bit of shed stuff, and then we're going to put the floor in the wagon. Let's get into it. Alright, so we got all this stuff in, got the fittings, got the filter in. I have had the rocker cover on, the new one, so I will show you that in a second. But yesterday I loaded up the whole engine, took it to second stage to Tim, got him to weld these brackets up for me, so they're now welded together, and I took the all thread out, put the bolts in, put the leads back on, painted everything, and forgot to show any of it, which is good. But they're nice and sturdy now, so they're not going anywhere, which is great. Then I put a O-ring on the bottom of the Dizzy, and I also replaced the bush. So when Chorney welded this, there's a bush in there that holds a little like fabric thing that just stops it all from rubbing, and it also keeps it all oiled. That fell out when he welded it because it got too hot and expanded. So I've replaced that, put the new fabric bush in there, and that's all good to go other than the sensor and obviously a new cap at a later date. Then when I got to Tim's, we realized that I'd forgotten this, which is the sensor for here, and we were going to make another one, and Tim convinced me what I thought would be the problem, and that is that this won't weld to that very nicely, because that's had this case 20 years of oil soak, and it's not gonna do it. So that's just going to weld like absolute garbage. So he told me to do this with it and come up with a better solution. So I spent a couple of hours last night just sort of thinking, and I've come up with this. So obviously a very different setup. What we were thinking was come off of this bolt here, or this one down here, and to here, and then have like a brace and then the sensor off of that. But with this, what happens is it'll bolt onto these bolt holes down here and actually just put the sensor right over there. So the problem with this at the moment, other than it being ugly and unfinished, is it actually vibrates. So if it were to vibrate, the end where my pinky is actually shakes a little bit. So I want to put a brace through here where the bends are and just stiffen it all up a bit so that when it's bolted on here, it doesn't get the shakes, and smash the sensor into that at 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 RPM. So I'm going to finish this, and then I need to get into the floors, which is what I've been trying to do for 2 days, but keep getting distracted. So I need to get these guys in there, and I also want to finish this hole here. So I'm not sure which one I'm going to do first, and one of them will probably be this episode, and one of them will be next episode. Alright, so to fix this bracket, I've made a little brace. So the idea with this is trace that there, and then there'll be a nice thick like backbone welded to it. So I'm going to cut this out and then get it to fit on here, and then weld along the join, I guess, and just put it sort of in the middle. And hopefully that'll take out all of the vibrations, so we shall see. Alright, so before I finish that bracket, I'll show you the rocker cover. Here it is. So this is a B-Speed cast aluminium rocker cover. So it's a little bit taller than the stock one. It's a little tiny bit wider, which was interesting, but it all fits and it's pretty sweet. I'm not a huge fan of this billet oil cap. It's actually quite nice, but I don't think it goes with the aesthetic I'm going for. So I'm going to try and get a original plastic one and then meld the two together. So that'll be interesting down the road. But I'm pretty happy with it. It looks pretty cool. Tosco, for you that don't know, is TRD, before TRD was TRD. So Tosco was from about 1957 to 1976, and then TRD was from 76 onwards, so roughly. So this is period correct, technically, for my car, even though I don't believe they actually made these for K series back in the day. But I'm super happy with it. So it cost a small fortune. It came from New Zealand, and it was made specifically for me. He had this one cast. He does do this like design, but this one was not on the shelf ready to go, so he actually had to make it and then get it powder coated and then get it machined and then get it taken off and then send it. So it took probably 2 months to get here, and it did cost a fair bit, but it's awesome, and I'll throw in some photos over the screen to show you what it looks like. Alright, so I've got this little bracket cut up, so I just had a socket on there to make sure I've got enough room, and then this is the bracket for the sensor. So the idea is this little thing's going to sit on there, and I'll do a little weld on either side. Not sure if I weld the whole lot, or maybe an inch here and an inch down here or something on both sides. And then when you turn it sideways, you got that little spine on it. It's probably a little bit thicker than I would have liked, so I might put some holes in it or something to make it look a bit nicer. Weld that on and drill some holes and make it look pretty, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so I got the bracket all welded up. Just made this little spine that I was talking about. Put a few holes in it. A few more than I thought I was going to, but it looks better with them nicely evenly spaced out. So the idea is the sensor goes in here, points into the trigger wheel, and then this can be used for zip ties for the wiring, or just aesthetics. But it's good enough. I need to paint it obviously, but now there's not as much deflection in it. But it doesn't actually flex anymore, so the idea is now that that won't get closer, that gap won't get closer, and the sensor won't hit that gear and get annihilated. So pull this off and paint it, and then we'll get into these floors. Alright, so I got that bracket painted and put back on the engine. Nice little gusset, and got the sensor in there, and as you can see the actual sensor is in line with the end of the gusset, and the wires can get zip tied on there nicely. So the idea is this gap needs to be about 1 millimeter, so I will have to adjust that obviously, but this is all sort of mock mounted anyway. But now it doesn't have as much flex. I won't say won't, it shouldn't move into that gear. So I'm pretty happy with that. If I do have issues down the track, I can run a bracket off of here down and just try and brace it a bit more, but I don't think it'll be an issue. Fingers crossed, I guess. I haven't dealt with these sensors before, I haven't done this kind of thing before, so hopefully it's all sweet. But the engine is coming together. So the engine's very close to done. We've got one more sensor I can think of, which is the idle air temp, which needs to go on the top, but I want to use the bonnet for clearance on that one. And then the two that I have spoken about in the past, which is the oil temp and pressure, and the fuel temp and pressure. Alright, so the last little update before I get into actually doing some work. Got the ladder here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's a wire that goes up and across and back down this wall. And then I've got what's called a lift brake winch or a load brake winch. So the idea is it ratchets up, and then when you go down it's got a small auto brake, so when you stop winding down the brake comes on and it won't just peel out. So with a normal winch you ratchet it up, and then when you go the other way it just peels and will just send. So the idea with this is it ratchets all the way up, and then when you want to go down you can just go as far as you want and stop, and it will just actually stop. It won't just free fall from the roof. So I'll put it up because it's really loud, and then I'll show you coming down. Halfway up at the moment, and then if I just go down, so down, free wheels, and then when I stop with the handle, you can't pull this anymore, but as I do the handle the cable does let go. So if I do that again, you can see the ladder coming down. It is quite slow, but I don't use it very often, so it shouldn't really matter. And it is really sturdy. I can pull on that. I think the winch is rated to about 300 kilos, and they're going up. It does ratchet, so it's pretty cool. It was like 90 bucks from Bunnings. And then when it's tucked away, it is clear of the purlin, and I have full height still. Alright, so we're onto the floors of the wagon finally. I got these acid dipped and primed a while back, and then just yesterday I put some silver on there so that the black texture will show up. So the idea at the moment is I've got about an hour and a half until I have to go to work. So I'm going to try and cut these to roughly the right size. The floor is already square and I'm happy with the size, but I need to cut these so they're the right size with a little bit of overlap, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to start along this side, so cut about 15mm off, and I'm also going to try and take this seat or seat belt bolt out, take that out so it actually like lines up onto the floor, and then go from there. So just keep cutting until it fits nicely. Got a little 10mm border around it so I can weld it in. Alright, so I've had about an hour of cutting and trimming. I was just sneaking up on it because I didn't want to go too far and then not have a little edge to actually weld to. So my plan is, or was, to put this in from underneath, but my plan now is to put it in from the top. So if I put it in from the top, it's going to be way stronger, whereas if I put it from the bottom, it's relying on the welds, whereas this is like a mechanical lock and then the engineering lock, or whatever you want to call the welding, and then that'll be nice and firm. So pretty much got to leave it for now, but I need to clean up the edges, and then I'll clean up the car and then drill some holes and get this all like clear coat in, and then start welding it in, I guess. And then once I get it all finished and it's all painted and everything, I'll do sealant along the edges so there's no water getting out, and then do the same from the bottom so no water gets in, and then we're pretty much good to go. So obviously the water's not going to drain as well here, but my plan is to not get the car wet, the inside of the car wet. That's my plan, and also the silicone should bridge that gap pretty well. So got to do the same on the other side, but I'm just going to tackle this side because I've started it. The other side can sit there and I'll just get this one done. Probably run out of welding gas and then go get some gas and do the other side. Alright, it's a new day. I'm back on the Wagon floors. So what I'm going to do next is clean up all of this stuff, make it nice to weld to, put some of that weld-free primer on here, clean up all the edges, and then do the same on this from the bottom, and then drill some holes, weld some stuff, make it happen. Alright, so I got everything cleaned up, put some weld-free primer on here, then you would have seen Emily pushing down on top of this. So I was under the car and I marked a line, so now if I stay within these lines, I'll have somewhere to weld to. So I have to go through the drill and drill a bunch of holes. Alright, slight change of plans. I've drilled all of these out to Cleco size, and what I'm going to do is chuck it back in the car, see which ones line up properly, mark them, and then not drill those ones, and then drill all the other ones. And then I'll weld all the other ones once it goes back in the car for a 700th time. Alright, it's looking pretty good. Probably went a bit overboard with the Clecos, but I want this to be nice. So, seatbelt guy is going to be the most important one. I've left a lot of room to weld all that in because I don't want to obviously pull the seatbelt through the floor. And then the other ones I've pretty much done in like a dual Cleco, 2 holes Cleco, 1 hole where it's needed, and just gone around and made it seat pretty good. So it's holding together really nicely compared to what it was. But now I have to pull all these Clecos out. I've marked all the holes I want to drill. So pull all the Clecos out, drill all those holes, probably paint everything again, and then put it back in. So I'll just get back to this stage with those holes drilled out and catch you up then. And we're back. So I got all those holes drilled out, redid the paint on the floor and redid the paint on the back of the panel. So all the Clecos are back in. Everything still lines up nicely. There's a few high spots, so what I'm going to do is just push on the panel, weld it, and then if it's not touching still, then I'll get the hammer out and give it a little adjustment. In here mainly is a bit of a problem. This corner was bent at some point. All along here fits really nice, and all along here fits really nice. There's a little bit of a something going on in the back, but other than that, probably just these 2 corners really. The rest of it fits pretty good. So I'm going to go through and weld everything that's not a Cleco, and then pull all the Clecos out, and then probably drill all of those out, and then weld all those up. Alright, and there we have it. Floor all welded in. I'm probably actually going to leave the welds because most of them are pretty tidy. There's one here with a bit of wire on it that I need to clean up. I'll clean them up from the bottom side, just if there's any like gunk, but the rest of it's really tidy. This weld's here's sort of structural, so I'll leave as much of that area as I can, and the rest of it I'm pretty happy with. So it is really in there, so there's no popping, there's no cracking. I haven't tested all the welds yet, so normally you get a screwdriver on them and just like kind of wiggle a little bit, but they're all really good. So I'm just going to put some paint over the top of it, and I'll address the rest of it once I've got the other floor and the firewall done, and then I can paint the whole floor, so when I'm ready for painting I will finish this off. There we go, bit of paint, looks pretty good. Alright, so we got the ladder done, we've got a whole bunch of talking done, we got the one side of the floor in, so that's it for this week. Come back next week and we'll put the other side in. Thanks for watching.